Why, hello, and welcome to the Storytellers Grimoire. I'm opening the book on my advanced tome of tricks, cantrips, and conjurations. I'm going to help you have a more immersive, well-crafted story, adventure, and character in your LARP. And that's whether you're a player, a storyteller, or a game administrator. My name's Chris Schetzel, and this is where the magic happens. Have you ever noticed that tabletop role-playing or online role-playing is fundamentally different from a LARP? Well, a lot of people know this. Obviously, you're standing around, you're in costume, you're interacting with people in a, immediate in-your-face kind of way. So there's those differences. But deeper than that, there's a method and a style to LARPing that's different from your other role-playing. And some people seem to have figured out a few things about how to do this that maybe have you scratching your head. In this podcast, I'm going to talk about how to make a good LARP character that's lasting. Specifically, I'm going to talk about how to make a character that always has something to do. The difference between a LARP character and a tabletop character. Your tabletop character, you can get up from the table, you can grab some Cheetos, you can chug them out and do, and you only are really required to roleplay at the moment that your turn comes up in the initiative order. But in a LARP, you're embodying the character pretty much from the moment you walk in the door till the game is called. What you'll find is, occasionally you'll see players sitting by themselves for really long periods of time in a LARP without really anything to do, hoping that the story will come to them, or clamoring for the storyteller's attention in order to find something to do. And then there are some players that seem to never have enough time to get what they're trying to do done. What's the difference between that character, that player, and the other character and player who always has something to do? In most cases, the answer is background. But there are a few other tips and tricks as well. Start simple, all right? Any type of character that you're creating needs a general background or a focus, a general conglomeration of what it is that makes up your character in terms of their race, their class, their gender, their caste outlook, and their in-character goals. Who's your daddy and what does he do? Where did you come from? What are your immediate goals and what are your long-term goals? You think about the character that you're creating in those ways just to start, then you'll have a good foundation to build on from there. Now let's talk about having goals. Your character should have a goal or 200 in order to make sure that your character has things to follow. And here's the important thing. Let your character fail at them. Some of them, obviously. And set goals for your character that are outlandish, that you could not possibly accomplish. Because people do that sometimes. They do, in fact, accomplish outlandish goals. First point, if you're going to have a goal, let's say your necromancer's goal is to kill 20 people in 20 separate locations, causing those locations to be haunted, and then draw together all of the haunts into a crazy geomantical circle, and then plunge the entire area between into realm of shadowy undeath. Well, are there mechanics in your game that would allow you to accomplish that? Maybe not. Does that matter? Absolutely not. You should choose smaller goals in the midst of that are obvious to other characters. I need to get 20 statues in the shape of my dark goddess, and I need to place them at each of these locations. And so while you're carving away, chanting evilly, the heroic characters in your group might look at you and go, why are you doing that? Why is he doing that? Do we know why he's doing that? I'm not sure we should let him continue to do that. He seems very intent on doing it. What happens if we let him do it? And allow them to thwart you, because if they do thwart you, well then, revenge. It's a dish best served super hot and maybe bloody. But that being said, always have a bunch of goals, and they can be short-term goals like meet the important people in my city, find out who they are, find out who's allied with who, establish a location for my character to base themselves out of, Make sure that I have the security set up right. Collect contacts and allies from the surrounding area to flesh out my character's backstory and have a mob at their back. Whatever the style of your character is, whether they're a loner, whether they're someone that wants to have their hands in all the pie, make sure that you try to forward those goals. Even in a setting, like a fantasy setting where you're roaming around all the time, you know, going from monster to monster, creating those goals are an additional task that when there's downtime, you're not in the midst of a combat or you're not in the midst of a big adventure, you can then make sure that you're forwarding those goals continuously and building your character's sort of world around them. Every character is both the internal part of that character and the external part of that character, how they view the world and also how they affect it. Your character, a good character, should distort the world around it a little bit. They should leave a mark. And that mark is going to be unique to that person. Write a character background. And even if it's not a full background, don't try and write a novel. Write a timeline. Get an idea of when the character was born, when they had their adolescence, when they became an adult, indulged in an adventure or got a vocation, and have a clue as to how they felt about those events in their life. And then whatever happened at whatever pivotal point that turned them to whatever more important character, I'll call it the PC glow, how they felt about that. Were you a character that was fated? Were you a character that was an accident? Were you a character that was swept up by events? Were you a character who was dragged into their situation, kicking and screaming? Find out what that is and how your character feels about that, and then allow that to evolve. Continue to reference back to those points as your character grows and what their viewpoints are that change, so that you will understand what their motivations are and how they grow as a character. That will help you as a player. And also, I recommend this for storytellers as well, building in some of these points into your NPCs. It's a good idea to give your characters and non-player characters just as many flaws and foibles as any other PC. An NPC without flaws is a boring NPC. Players hate them, and storytellers find that they're never able to forward the kind of tales that they want to with NPCs like that. So do yourself a favor and kill your darlings, or at least give them a blinky red light that someone can push to make them explode. So here's a good one, and actually a lot of role players in LARPs do this naturally because they feel like if they don't do this, that they're going to be overwhelmed by the LARP experience. And that is to have friends before you ever walk in the door. So a lot of first-time LARPers will come in with a group of friends or a couple of friends or a couple will come in. And so that they know that, you know, they've got somebody who they can talk to for sure and that they can ask questions of and whatnot. So telling someone to come in with an ally or something inside of the game is for most part almost a no-brainer. Some people do make the mistake, though, of making a character that will definitely not interact in any way with any of the characters that their friends are making. That could be fun if you're an advanced role player. And in fact, I recommend you do that if you're an advanced role player. Get out of your clique. Get involved in some other role play. And then when you meet, you know, your other friends' characters, you'll have that rapport on lock. And then you'll get to find out, are you friends? Are you enemies? Are you frenemies? You don't know. And they'll have developed their characters while you've been away, and you'll have developed your character while they've been away. That's a great advanced tip. Now, somewhere in the middle is the idea of coming in with not just your friends and not like splitting off into a completely different vector than your friends, but in sort of immersion, collecting both friends and enemies before you walk in the door. Rival with someone. Get involved in a conflict with someone. Get involved in that conflict in your character's backstory. So once upon a time, you and some other character were trying to make an important deal with a very important person, and things went south, and that other person got the better of you, or neither of you got the better of the situation, and you both turned out up the creek. Find some backstory with other people, because the way that they will interpret that will change how that version of events happen. I don't know necessarily if I would recommend just going in with a death wish vendetta against another character, because that's actually very tiring. You might be one of those players that really enjoys like running into the middle of something and exploding, but I find that that's not really an advanced way of thinking. I feel like that's the kind of thing that bored people do. And if you are one of those bored people, then you're probably, hopefully, gaining some insight that will help you kind of step away from that and find some more depth. This last tip is probably worthy of an entire podcast on its own, and I might do that, just depending. In fact, any one of these could be expanded upon a lot, and I can give specific tips on each of them. And if you're interested in specific tips based on any one of these top 5 suggestions that I've made today, consider sending me a comment. I'd be happy to answer them and give you some existing tips that I've got and even help you with a specific situation. I don't mind. But this last tip is to make your character come alive through something that actors call business. And one of the things that you're taught when you're in an improvisational situation is the act of using business. Now, business in an acting sense is the small actions that define a character's persona that are physical actions in most cases. Flipping a pen around is business. Worrying a toothpick is business. Affecting a hunch is business. Having a different accent is business. If you're playing a highly social character and you're able to quote Oscar Wilde at the drop of any hat because you have a little book of snarky quotes, that is extremely effective in a live action role-playing situation. There are some masters out there that you can draw from, and that's definitely business as well. Consider where your character came from, what they're interested in, and how they move, how they talk, how they perceive things. Creating those businesses for your character is really going to allow you to gain the respect of your peers in the role-playing community, because your characters will all be very different. When you have a different nervous tic, when you have a different affectation, when you have a different way of moving, when you have a different way of speaking, those things combine to craft the outward appearance of a character. And when you practice those differences over time, then that becomes ingrained. And so it becomes very easy to step into that character. And so I definitely recommend working on your character's business. Make your character come alive with those kinds of details. In a LARP, costuming is key. We have all seen the hoity-toity Ventrue, who has shown up to a live-action Vampire the Masquerade game, of which I am a storyteller for, EmeraldCityChronicles.com. Check it out. And found out that that guy is in a t-shirt which probably has the same Mountain Dew stains on it from the D&D campaign that we mentioned earlier, and it doesn't really come across. The guy might be a great role player. He might have an excellent grasp of the game and the style and the theme and the rules, but dude needs to suit up. Know what I'm saying? Put on at least a polo, something. Throw a sports jacket on over the t-shirt. Do something slightly different than your street clothes, because the act of getting into character in a physical way actually helps you build the character, not only with you, but also with the person that you're role-playing with. So thank you for listening to my tips, tricks, and conjurations. This has been the Storytellers Grimoire. My name's Chris Schetzel. This was where the magic happened. You just got magic.